Hi everybody, it's John back again with another model in box review. Today we're looking at a very iconic Second World War single-seat, single-engine fighter. This is the Mitsubishi A6M0, often called the Raisin or the Zeki or the Zero Zen. The aircraft had many names, but it was certainly a very, very good dogfighter, and it took the United States Navy and Army Air Force completely by surprise in 1941 when they first encountered the aircraft, not only at Pearl Harbor but during the other campaigns and the island hopping campaigns right up until about the end of 1943, when the aircraft was starting to be outclassed by contemporary American fighters of the period. The kit we're looking at today is a 72nd scale Matchbox Mitsubishi A6M Zero Zen, and the variant that I've got was the reboxing of the A6M2 Zero Zen. Serial number is PK4. This is the fourth kit in the purple range, released in 1972. We'll just go through the boxing history like normal. There is a little bit of confusion which I'm going to clear up also with the reboxings and some of the boxings, which was caused by Revell when Revell took over Matchbox. They did introduce a number of kits which weren't actually Revell kits or Matchbox kits. We'll go into that in a minute. 1972 was the first release date. This is a Type 1 box. Remember, these boxes had a flip top lid, so they came off. They also had no plastic clear panel in the back of the box, and on the back of the box you had the paint and decal application guide on the back. And these were 1972 release. The Zero PK4 was one of the first of 19 models that they released on the market in 1972. And I think the 72nd scale Matchbox Zero is actually not a bad offering in terms of when you think of when it was out and the competition it had at the time. I think it was a good option. This kit, remember, predates the Frog release, which was released in 1974, and that kit is by no means anywhere near as good as this one. 1974, the Type 1 box goes through to 72 goes through to 1974. This is the Type 2 box. There are a couple of changes here. You had the open-ended boxes rather than the flip-top lids. These boxes opened up to one end, and on the back of the box you had a clear plastic window, which enabled you to see what the colour of the sprues were inside the box. You also had, in the left-hand bottom corner here, you had two-colour kit, and this circle band here would have denoted the range the kit was in, and this obviously being the purple range, it would be in purple. And then you had two-colour kit written in white with a black background around the outside outlining it. So that's 74's release, the Type 2 box. Then in 1979, Matchbox joined up with a company called AMT in America. Now, AMT were a company that were producing, some of them were quite crude models. I have one AMT model which when I get round to the inbox review you'll probably start laughing your head off when you see it, but it is that they were pretty crude kits for aircraft. And AMT were very, very pleasantly surprised when Matchbox wanted AMT to release Matchbox kits in America. And they changed the outlook of the box to produce a white border around the original image used by Matchbox, and they did away with the two-colour kit logo and just had it moulded in two colours on the side here. And also the aircraft, this is the first time the aircraft was actually designated an A6M2, and it was called a Zeki Zero Zen. 1/72nd scale plastic kit, and the age group was aged between 10 and up. The actual age group they were aiming at was between 10 and about 17, I would say. Matchbox, that was the sort of era they were sort of aiming for. This is an image, actually, just in case you're interested. This is an image of Pearl Harbor, Battleship Row, which is quite nice. 1979, that's the AMT release there. Then in 1982, this style of boxing was released, and this is actually the style of boxing that I've got the kit from. It's still a two-colour model. The model Sprue inside was still moulded in two different colours, but this particular boxing in 1982, the kit was being released under the influence of Revell, and Revell had quite a lot to do with the marketing, and I think this was all orchestrated by the guy who bought Airfix in the early 80s, who was a Chinese man, I believe, and he wanted Revell to do a lot of the marketing for him, And eventually, of course, Revell got hold of the marketing rights and changed Matchbox forever, and eventually took the company over lock, stock and barrel in the early 90s. This kit's boxing is a Type 3 boxing from Matchbox, and it was also re-released after the Zero was took off the market for a number of years in the late 80s, and it was re-released again in the same box, exactly identical box, in 1991. So the Type 3 box was actually identical, and also the Type 4 box was identical as well. But I think the Type 4 box differed from the Type 3 in that it had a flip-top lid as opposed to an open-ended box lid. The one I've got is the open-ended box lid, and I think the 90s releases kits had flip-top lids, because I've had quite a few Matchbox models that were 90s release boxings, and they all have flip-top lids, so that's quite interesting as well. The next kit we're looking at is an interesting hybrid. Well, saying hybrid, it isn't really a hybrid. But there's something interesting going on between this release and the next release. In 1996, Revell took hold of the marketing rights for, well, it actually happened in around about 1992, but Revell actually took over the company of Matchbox, and they had a lot of kits which were still hanging around that needed to be reboxed, and they utilised the original image from the Type 3 and 4 boxings, but they changed the serial number to 40004, which encompasses the PK4 original serial number. But they also had these kits rendered in one colour. They were all grey usually. Sometimes some of the kits were a different colour, like blue or maybe green, but usually they were grey plastic. And this kit is actually a Matchbox model in a Revell rebox, and it was called a Mitsubishi Zero. Here is a matchboxkits.org. This is actually the website that I got the image from. It's not actually it's not an image that's on the front of the box cover. 1996, that goes from that boxing to this reboxing of the 1998 release Mitsubishi Zero from Matchbox. Now the interesting thing about this, and it does sort of give away what's going on here, is that the serial number has been changed to 40002. Now 40002, if that was a Matchbox PK number, that should be a Spitfire Mark 9. But it actually isn't a Matchbox kit that's in the box, it's actually a Frog release kit. This is actually the 74 original release Frog kit, and I'm going to show you exactly why I know that this is the case. But this kit was moulded completely in grey plastic. It went over to the new Revell style boxings with this black border and all this yellow, orange and red flashes going on all over the place, and they introduced a new type of artwork on the front box cover there. So that's that's 40002 1/72 scale. That's the Matchbox last release rendering, but it's not a Matchbox kit inside the box. Next, I'm going to show you, this is why I know this is not a Matchbox kit. This is the original artwork. You can see at the top here, this is 40002. And here you have a Sprue, which looks absolutely nothing like the model I've got in my Matchbox kit. And I'll just want to draw your attention to this Sprue in particular, where you've got a one-piece tailplane, a three-bladed propeller opposite on the Sprue and an engine cowling. And these undersurface wings here were a typical Frog trait, where you just glued the undercarriage legs into the underside of the wings. There were no doors, no wheel wells whatsoever on most Frog kits of this era. They just glued the undercarriage straight into the underside of the wing. Now I'm going to show you the Frog kit. This is the Frog release from 1974, and as you can see, there's the Sprue with a one-piece tailplane, there's the engine cowling, and there's that three-bladed prop. Interesting. It's unfortunately you can't see the underside of the wings, but I've seen images of the underside of the wings, and those holes are definitely present in the Frog kit. Right, I also want to take you through the Sprue history, because in Type 1 boxings, the Matchbox kit was originally released in two colours, but they weren't the colours that I've got. They were actually orange and white. And I can remember building a Type 1 Box Zero kit when I was about 9 years old, maybe 8 years old, and I do remember this kit being strikingly orange and white, and I really loved it. I kept it for ages. The first change of colours on the Sprues were a sort of a ginger brown and a bright green colour. And this was in the Type 2 boxings. So this was carried. This was put into the Type 2 boxings after the Type 1s were finished, and you can see there that you've got the green and the blue sprue, green and the brown sprue there quite clearly. And when you have a look at my kit has a different colour sprue. It's got the same sprue as the green sprue, but the other colour is black. And you'll see that in a minute when I show you the in-box review for the model itself. Right, then there's a nice image here of an A6M20. This is one of the ones that have been they've been restored to flying condition. In the 70s, there weren't any Zeros flying in the world whatsoever, and it was quite common for the movie industry to convert T6 Texans into Zeros because they had an uncanny sort of resemblance to a Zero, but you could usually tell because in the leading edge of the wing here, they would have had a bulge section here, which would have housed the undercarriage, and also the wing swept back slightly and then tapered to a straight edge on the trailing edge of the wing. And that's how you can tell a Texan conversion from a Zero conversion. The Zero's wing was completely tapered from both sides, and that's quite a nice image. What I want to do is just pan the camera over here so you can have a good look at this kit, because this kit is actually quite nice. The pro builders and modelers for the IPMS and everything, they actually liked this option. When it first came out in the 70s, they actually thought it was one of the better options on the market, and it's still not a bad and quite viable option to undertake if you want to build a Zero. So what we'll do now, we'll just take the parts and bits and bobs out here, and we'll just go through the inbox review like I normally do in the normal fashion. Right, the instruction leaflet. The instruction leaflet on this kit, actually what I want to do is I just want to quickly pull the camera down and then put it up at an angle slightly so I can get rid of some of that shadow. That would be nice, wouldn't it? A bit of luck. Oh, that should do that a bit better. There we go. That's better. Now, in the original Type 1 releases and Type 2 releases, the instruction leaflet would have been the same colour as the Matchbox colour range, so in this case it would have been a purple instruction leaflet. But later in the reboxings, around about the late 70s, early 80s, they tended to start boxing the instructions in a white colour, and they were regimental across all of the ranges. On the back, you've got a paint colour guide, which is quite nice. Lots of different colours there to paint their kit as you're building it and finished product. And you've also got a conversion there for some of the Airfix colours, but there is lots of information on the internet to help you convert the colours into the colours that you're actually looking for in the Humbrol and maybe Tamiya acrylic range. On the back of the instruction leaflet, you've got PK4 there in the left-hand box, and then you've got a complaint slip built into the instruction leaflet, which was quite nice. Enables you to write off to Matchbox to get some parts if they were missing. On the middle section, you've got a guide there of what to paint and when to paint it prior to assembly or during assembly, and the colours to paint them, which is quite nice, the various different parts there, which is quite good. And then the instruction leaflet itself folds away into a nice A5 shape. On the front cover there you've got an image of the front boxing, and this is interesting because this is the original artwork, but this kit instruction comes out of a later artwork boxing, which is quite interesting. And then you've got some stats and data on the Zero there on the top. Just quickly go through the instruction leaflet. It's quite easy to follow the instructions, and I won't pedantically go through this very much. But basically, there's 8 sections to build the kit in, and in section 1 you're just putting the interior together, which is basically a pilot and a seat. Section 2 you're putting the fuselage halves together. It's quite easy to follow, isn't it? Section 3, engine sub-assembly, and section 4 you just marry the engine and the canopy and the front decking there onto the kit's fuselage. Section 5 and 6 are the tail empennage, quite easy, and 6 is the wings, putting the wings together and a few of the aerials and bits and bobs there. And in section 7 you're building the undercarriage, main oleo undercarriage and doors. The wheels on this kit actually rotate, and then in section 8 you're just finishing off with an under tank fuel tank there that goes underneath the centre section, and putting the main undercarriage doors, tail wheel and the undercarriage into place under the wings. It's quite easy. And also on the back edge here you've got a nice list of all the PK kits and the ranges that were available at the time. Yeah, that's quite nice as well. So that's quite interesting. The decals. Now the decals on this kit I'm not expecting when you buy a kit, even at this age, the decals to look like this. Now I'm hoping I can clean these up, and I'm hoping they're usable. They look like they're probably going to be usable, but the register on them, it isn't brilliant, is it? That red disc inside that white outline, it isn't regimental all the way round, and I might have to try and trim them a little bit to use them. That's if I can use them at all. But those decals are in pretty bad condition, but the majority of it is just surface dirt, and I think they might just wipe clean okay. But the quality of the decals, you know, on the whole, they're not too bad. They're not too raised, and the backing film, what you can see through there, doesn't seem to be that bad, does it? Not a lot of decals on Matchbox models, I must admit. Transparencies, I'm just trying to go through these sprues quite quickly. There's not an awful lot here. The sprue, the transparency on the Matchbox kit is actually quite nice. That's quite nicely crafted. It's quite nicely framed, and it's pretty clear, isn't it? So I was quite pleased with that. I think that will look quite good when it's put on the kit. I think that looks quite nice. That's quite good. The black sprue. Black sprue is mainly the wings and the pilot and pilot seat. Just one of the things I wanted to show you, that the recessed panel lines on these wings are quite deep and severe. But it was a common trait with Matchbox kits. You know, this is what you got when you bought a Matchbox kit. But I'll be honest with you, you don't buy Matchbox kits for accuracy and fantastic panel lines and really good quality fine detail. You buy them for the nostalgia or the ease of fit, and children love building these kits. Even today, I think if they were getting into modelling for the first time, or maybe early in their modelling escapades, I think a Matchbox kit would be a fun build for them, which is nice. You know, the pilot, there's the pilot figure, a Matchbox pilot figure. He's quite nice, isn't he? I'm not as a fan of Matchbox pilots as I am Airfix pilots, but I know some of you subbers out there prefer them. The green sprue, again, I'll just show you the bits and bobs here. You've got quite a detailed frontage there to the engine. A lot of people would be expecting to see cylinders behind there, but the Zero actually had vanes, similar to what you would normally see on an FW190, although the FW190 was an annular radiator. With the Zero, it had vanes that opened up and closed up variably to help cool the engine in the hot weather of the Pacific Theatre. The propeller blade there is quite nicely moulded, that's quite good. And the fuselage half, that fuselage half is quite nicely rendered as well. There's a little bit of raised panel line going on there, but the moulding on the rudder there looks quite nice as well. I think it'll look quite nice. I think it looks like a nice kit. All the detail on the interior of the fuselage isn't great, is it? But you guys out there that like messing around with aftermarket parts and resin bits and bobs to put in, I think you'd have a field day, because the Matchbox Zero has got lots of room inside to enable you to mess around with aftermarket parts and have lots of scope to put stuff in there and get it looking really nice. Right, we just put all this back in the box. I want to go through the gump because there are quite a large number of options available, even in just 70-second scale, which I've actually just gone down to just to make it simpler. I don't, you know, on these very popular kits where lots of different firms actually build a model, I don't think it's worth going through all the different ranges and scales. I think it's just worth sticking to 1/72. Right, the model itself is a Matchbox Mitsubishi A6M20Zen. Its release date was 1972 and its serial number was PK4. The kit's moulded in 1/72 scale, and there are decals for two versions. One is an A6M2 Type 210, based on the aircraft carrier, Imperial Japanese Naval Aircraft Carrier Kage, circa December 1941, and it served the 1st Carrier Division on that ship. The second is an A6M20 of the Imperial Japanese Naval Operational Training Unit in 1941. That's the aircraft that's green and bright orange underneath. The dimensions of the kit is about 4.75 inches long. Its span is about 6 inches and it sits about 1.5 inches high, and it's undercarriage. The kit comprises 16 parts on a green plastic sprue, 14 parts on a black plastic sprue, and it has one clear part, totaling 31 parts in total. Now the options and costs, I've split these into two different sections, one with standalone kits and one with reboxings of other people's kits, and they are quite interesting. AMV Models did an A6M1 series, well, they were a couple of model boxings actually, and they're resin kits that cover the prototypes, the first and second prototypes. These kits are actually quite accurate, but they're dear. They're about £25 to £40 each. AML did an A6M2 two-seat trainer. This aeroplane actually has two separate cockpits, and it retails about £6 to £12. Academy's A6M5C is about £8 to £14.50. The Airfix Series 1 A6M2 Old Tool Zero is about £4 to £52, depending on how old the kit is and how good the quality of the model is. And Airfix also did a retool of the A6M2B, which retails about £6 to £17. Aoshima did an A6M2 for about £5 to £25. Bullmark did a Zero Type 21, but I've got no pricings available on that. F-Toys did a Zero Type 21 for about £15. Frog's original release was about £6 to £25 for the Zero. Fine Moulds did an A6M2, a 2A, a 2B and a 3 for about £15 to £17. Hasegawa did an A6M2, a 2A, a 2B, a 3, a 5, a 5B and a 5C, and later they did an A6M8, retailing for about £6.50 up to about £30. Hasegawa also did a triple plane pack called the Shinden Kai no Maki plane set, and this includes a Shinden Kai, a Ki-61 Hein, and a Zero fighter, and that kit retails about £30 to £40. Hawk released an A6M50 for £10 to £15. Hella released an A6M50 for £4 to £15. Hobby Boss did a Zero Type 52 for about £6 to £11. And JMK did an A6M2 VAC 4 model for about, I would say about £10 to £12. Johan does an A6M2 under roof seaplane, which can be modelled either or from the same box. That retails for £18 to £20. And LS did an A6M2 and an A6M5, both about £12.50. The original Matchbox A6M2 was about £7 to £15, and Model X did an A6M5 for about £31.50. Polystill did an A6M2, no pricings available on that, and the original release Revell A6M5 Type 56 was £2.50 to £25 depending on how good the kit is. Revell also released a Dogfight Double Kit with a Wildcat as well as a Zero in the same box, but again I've got no pricings for that, but I bet it's a fortune because it's rare as hen's teeth. Starfix did an A6M5, which is a pretty dire model, for about £5 to £12. Tamiya did an A6M2B, a 3, a 3A and a 5 for about £3 to £29. UPC did an A6M3 and 5 for about £10, and YMC does an A6M5, but I got no pricings available on that either. Now then, the reboxings, there are quite a few of these as well. Now AMT did a Frog Zero with AMT Frog Kit release for about £15 to £20, and AMT also obviously released the Matchbox A6M2 and the Matchbox Kit released for about £10 to £15. Advent did an A6M5, which is the original Revell kit, for I got no pricings on those, and the Air Flash kit did an A6M3 of the Tamiya Rebox and no pricings available on that. Now Frog did release a set of aircraft kits called Airlines, and they did a Zero in this reboxing for £10 to £25, and Airfix also produced the original old tool from Airfix Corporation of America, building an A6M2 for £5 to £10. Airfix also released an A6M2 old tool Zero under the Lodala label for about £10 to £15. RI did an A6M2, which was a reboxed LS kit, for about £15 to £20, and Bachmann Fujimi did a Zero Type 21, a 32 and a 54, which is a reboxed UPC kit, for about £7 to £10. Doyusha did an A6M5, which is a reboxed hobby box kit, for about £7 to £10, and Encore Models did an A6M5, which is a reboxed Hella kit, for about £7 to £15. Entex Industries did an A6M2, which is a reboxed Aoshima kit, for £5 to £20, and Farpro Japan does an A6M2, which is a reboxed Aoshima kit, for about £25. Fujimi do a Zero Type 11 seaplane and a Type 54 Zero, which is a reboxed UPC kit in the same box as two planes, for £22. And Fujimi AHM does a Zero Type 32 and a 54, which is a reboxed UPC kit, for about £10 to £15. Now Gartex did an A6M1, a 2K and a 5, which is a reboxed Hasegawa kit, no prices available for that. Glasslight did a 0 Type 21, which is the Bullmark rebox, no prices available on that either. And Kodansha does an A6M2 fine moulds rebox kit, no prices available on that. Matchbox also did a 0, which was a late production last release from Matchbox. That's the reboxed frog kit for £12 to £15. MPC does an A6M2, which is the reboxed Old Tool Airfix kit for £5 to £25. Micro Ace does an A6M2 and 5, which is a reboxed LS kit for £10 to £12. Model List does a 0, which is a reboxed Academy kit for £5 to £8. Micro Ace do an A6M2 and 5, which is a reboxed LS kit for £10 to £12. Platts do a 0 Type 21, which is an F-Toys kit for about 15 quid. And Revell did an A6M5, which is a reboxed frog kit for about £5 to £11. Revell Concourse did an A6M5, which is a Revell kit for about £5 to £10. And Revell Lodella do a 0, which is a reboxed Revell kit for £5 to £10. SK Model do a 0, which is an Old Tool Airfix kit for no pricings available on that, but I bet it's cheap. Shisaoka Hobby do an A6M2 and a 3 and an 8, which is a UPC kit, no pricings available on that. Testers did an A6M5, which is a reboxed Hawk kit for £5 to £15. And lastly, the most expensive garbage kit of the lot is the Triang Frog 0 Zen reboxed frog kit for 15, but usually it sells for in excess of 50 to 60 quid. Conclusions. Once again, we're looking at a Matchbox kit, though basic, is quite well liked by the pro builders for its simplicity and ease of fit. With that in mind, I do feel that this kit would make a good nostalgia build. It's fun and relatively accurate, as an A6M2 0, the early boxings when released, were just called 0 Zens, and I don't really think even Matchbox knew which variant was the closest to the Matchbox kit. It is, however, a lot better than at least 7 of the options available in 1/72nd scale. Kits to avoid are the Old Tool Airfix, the Aoshima, Frog, Hawk, and most notably the Starfix option, which the pro builders state if you paid any money for this kit, you've been ripped off. Notable good options are the Hasegawa kits, the new Tool Airfix, and especially the Tamiya kits, which have been described by the pro builders as maybe the best World War II aeroplane in 1/72nd scale in existence. This is the inbox review finish for the Matchbox PK4-0. I hope this video has been of some use. If you've got any questions, queries, comments, just pop them in the comments. If it's questions, I'll try and get back to you as quickly as possible. And as usual, may all your projects go smooth as hell and just have lots of fun out there. See you again for the next one. Bye-bye.